meeting to order of the Town of Stonington Mystic Park Implementation Committee. We can commence with a reading of the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I'm not sure whether we need our alternates, but I think because we have a couple people missing, why don't we plan to seat both alternates, Jim Kelly and Catherine Birchenall? Well, Catherine's a regular member now, right?
No, I'm an alternate.
Okay. So is there a motion to seat Jim Kelly and Catherine Birchenall?
Motion to see Jim Kelly and Catherine. Farouk.
Motion made by Farouk. Is there a second?
Second.
That by Breck or Steve? And all those in favor of seating Catherine and Jim, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we'll seat Jim and Catherine. First order of business after seating of alternates is any comments from the public. Will all the public a chance to second call, no public call. 6/2020 meeting.
Nick, we're having a hard time hearing you.
July 6th meeting. Hear me?
You keep freezing up and we can't hear you.
Nick, it might be helpful if you dial in via regular phone because we're having a hard time hearing you. Your internet is very unstable.
Andy, can you text Nick the dial-in for the phone?
Might have to call 911.
All right, I texted him the info.
Hi, Sandy. It's Steve. Can you hear me?
Steve, we could hear you.
You can or you can't?
Oh, there I can hear you. Yes, I'm sorry. I was on mute.
That's okay. I'm working off my new hearing aid, so I'm trying to figure out how the phone and my hearing aids work. So sorry about that.
It's working great. I suggest you keep it.
I never knew I was this deaf.
Sandy, this is Debbie. Are we going to be sharing attachments on the WebEx? Because I could also join by computer. My internet's spotty for talking, but if there are going to be things to look at.
I don't know how to put those up. I don't,
Okay, then I'll just stay on the phone.
okay.
Hello? Hello, folks?
Nick, are you at the 32 number? With the last two digits?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna change that to you then.
All right, my apologies. So I was asking for a motion for approval of the minutes of the July 6th, 2020 meeting.
So moved. Motion to approve. Forward.
Second, Jim Kelly.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes of the July 6th meeting. Any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes of the July 6th, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right.
Mary.
All right, motion is carried. Correspondence, old business. We have several items of old business. We have a brownfield grant application update. What I'd like to suggest is that if Susan, you could give a presentation of sorts, give a rundown on the proposed project budget update, and I'm going to try to absent myself and come in so that I can participate more fully. So, Susan, you could proceed to give the budget update.
Sure. We've checked on what's left, which is around $50,000. We actually paid the submerged aquatic vegetation bill that was received today. I've already sent it back out to be to have the check written. So that was $3,500. That was one of the things that we had discussed at the July meeting. We also have previously paid for the remedial action plan to be completed, but not submitted yet to the state. So that's already been taken care of as well. So with the remainder of the funds, we met earlier this week with Debbie Downey and Nick Keppel and made a list of, sort of the idea of how are we going to proceed with the assessment piece of the grant without going over into the remediation side of the grant. So what we're trying to do with the list of items that we're going to complete going forward with the remainder of the money really has to put us into the position of being able to, permit as quickly as possible without going over the December 31st date. So I'll be getting back to Don Friday after this meeting and letting him know what other items we're able to accomplish. And of course, in the meantime, the assessment grant, while we're trying to close that up, we're trying to go after the remediation money. So we have already put in for the pre-application for the municipal brownfield grant program with the state of Connecticut through DECD for the grant for remediation for the $200,000 for that. So since I don't have administrative capabilities, Sandy has them. I'll just hold it up to show you that, I believe they attached this to the attachment so that you can see it. But this is the, that this is our pre-application that we've already submitted. We've been working actually on the application for all of the time that I've been with Stonington since the first week in May. And Debbie Downey and Nick Keppel and a few others have been engaging together to put together the application. The application for the remediation grant was just released in the past week. It's a little different than the one that we've been working off of from the previous year. We think substance-wise it's the same, but it's arranged very differently. So we're going to take some time going forward to, Debbie made the suggestion that, we could put it actually out on Google Docs so that we're making sure that we don't, my fear, I don't know how to explain this, is when everybody's editing at once, that people are, crossing out and editing, and then you have many different versions going on at the same time. So the thought is if we put it out there on Google Docs and invite people to edit, it's working off the system, and all of the edits will be put together in a collaborative way, and then I won't be trying to chase down from 16 different drafts of how did they all collate together, or that people won't be, reviewing the same items and adding and subtracting the same sentences. So we'll be doing that. And also, just sort of checking that rating and ranking wise, we've made sure that there isn't anything else we want to add. We've already talked just in a small way about the fact that there are a few things we want to discuss a little further in terms of the health benefits of the Boathouse Park, that we want to, sort of up the ante and up our ranking in terms of talking about those health benefits and what can it do for the town. We also want to add some of the qualifications of the people involved because some of that has changed. Not only myself, but the town actually has a number of employees that could have their hands, in this, in the finance department, our engineering spaces. So in each of those ways, those people could be adding information that might up our ranking. So we'll be working on that in the coming weeks. So we have a lot of work to be done, but I think it's going to be sort of an exciting time to move forward. Chad had a lot of good information about the submerged aquatic vegetation assessment that was done and what we'd be able to do going forward with the living shoreline. So there's some interesting things coming up that I think you're going to be excited to hear about.
Thank you.
Can I interrupt for a moment, Nick? We had somebody else join us with a telephone number with 97 at the end. Who is that, please? Okay, I guess they don't want to be identified. And Chad Frost has joined us too. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Susan. Any questions for Susan? What's our best guesstimate at this point, Susan, of the timeline? Susan or Deb? Timeline for submission of the application?
You're on mute, Susan. We can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry. So the notice of funding availability for the newest grant, the date hasn't been released, at least that I've seen yet. We're expecting it to be about 4 weeks after they've released the notice of funding availability. But at the last time I checked, they still only had released the application materials and the pre-application materials. So we haven't been notified of that yet. That being said, we're still going to just go ahead forward and get ready to submit that whatever that date is, that we're go ahead and prepare.
Yeah, this is Debbie. Everything I've seen is the same as we have not released the deadline yet, but we will be starting probably as early as this week, trying to transfer the information from the old application to the new application.
Okay. So one of the, I'd like to give a major shout out to Fran Hoffman and John Thornell in particular for an extraordinary job of marshaling letters of support for the application to the state. So Susan remarked last week that she hadn't ever seen as many letters of support in all her years of doing grant work. So I think that's a very positive sign. And Fran, Deb, and John in particular did a yeoman's work to marshal those letters. I'm sure they will have a big impact. So everyone knows that the grant application will be a key to the project, part of the project. Sandy, am I right that Mike is not on tonight? Mike O'Neill?
Mike O'Neill, no, he's not present.
Okay. Breck, or does anybody from Stonington crew wish to give any kind of an update from the friends side of the project?
All I'm aware of is a blog post that was put up by John Thornell about the Denison Pequot Seapost and the continuation of the greenway from the land preserve on either side of the river. So, which was I just put out to the Stonington Community Forum and other areas. So that's all I have to report so far. We haven't met in a while. So.
Okay. So we'll move on to, unless anybody has any other old business, we'll move on to new business. Chad, do you want to run through the various activities that you've included in your materials?
I can. I can see Fran Hoffman is waving her hand, looking like she wanted to add something to the grant discussion. So before we move on, maybe she wants to add.
Sure, Fran. Sorry.
You have
Muted, Fran.
yourself, Fran. You're muted. We can't hear you.
Fran, you're muted. At the bottom, at the very bottom.
All right, that did. Okay. All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
You just muted yourself again. There you go. Oh, no.
Okay.
This is very sensitive. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to delay. But Catherine Birchinall was part of the letter writing group too. I just wanted to make sure that she got recognized for work. The other question I had was if anyone had been in contact with EPA Region 1 about funding of grant availability through them.
Through who? Brent?
EPA Region 1. Because they've been down here and looked and liked the project, and they encouraged us to apply to them as well. And I just wanted to make sure that we were not just focusing on the state.
Fran, this is Debbie.
Yep.
We're trying to apply to EPA Region 1 for a grant for Stillman Mill. So I don't know if they would give us 2 grants in the same town.
It's always worth a try.
Okay. We could take a look at that then.
All right. I think that's important to try. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Good. That's it.
Sorry, Catherine. Didn't mean to overlook your efforts.
No worries.
So, Chad, you want to proceed?
Sure, yeah, I'll jump in. So to give a summary of what we've done over the last month or two, as I think everybody was aware, we were doing the SAV study, the Submerged Aquatic Vegetation Study. We had Rich Snarsky, which is our wetland scientist, go out, and he identified everything that he obviously saw both below water in the submerged region as well as upland up to the coastal edge. And we got good results is my short answer. So nothing in the submerged aquatic vegetation. There's literally nothing out there growing below the water surface that will hold up the project. So that's the first good news. It's bad kind of from a big environmental picture that there's nothing growing there, but it's good from a permitting perspective because there's nothing to really infringe on it. Then he proceeded to identify, as you should have all received in your packets, there was a survey plan that's got some different colors and shades and stuff in it. So that's all technically above the water line vegetation. It's coastal vegetation. Stuff that we knew was already out there, the Spartina and the sea lavender specifically. But he did a great job of very painstakingly flagging every single species of plant that's out there. And then we had a surveyor go out there and survey every single flag that he hung. And then we all went out there together after that and kind of double checked the survey, adjusted things that needed to be as they picked flags and things like that, and got a very high level detailed survey of the upland aquatic vegetation, if you will. And it's really helpful because we all were able to walk around out there and look at what's happening specifically and with a lot of detail. And as I kind of mentioned in an email to Nick, that we were kind of geeking out about it quite a bit because literally the elevation, if the elevation is off by an inch, one type of plant grows and another plant doesn't grow. And we saw some very stark lines by elevation, even just between the Spartina and the sea lavender, where, literally to the half an inch of elevation changes what's growing in different places. So having that really detailed information for this site specific will be very helpful going forward. And we were also able to identify a few areas, again, it's very elevation dependent, where we don't have any vegetation growing on the beach. And we're thinking that's because of ice scour and just where the waves come in and crash. That if you remember that rock sill that's around the edge, that obviously protects quite a bit of the stuff right behind it, which is the sea lavender and the Spartina, Spartina. But then just elevationally above that, there's an area where we think the water is able to clear the rocks on a very high tide. And when that makes it all the way to shore, we're getting a little bit of erosion at that elevation level. So we're looking into some options for that, both from what can we do from a living shoreline plant perspective and what can we do as we go forward to mitigate that particular zone of elevation. And again, it's like a couple of inches. So a lot of really good data. We got some great photographs out there. The sea lavender was blooming like crazy, and the amount of honeybees that were out there pollinating all the sea lavender was pretty cool. And we associated those honeybees with Coogan Farm, since that's the only active area that I know of honeybees close by. So it was really neat to see honeybees from, across the street in that nature preserve coming over and pollinating the natural sea lavender right along the coast. So that was all great. We got really good information, probably a lot more detailed information than we were expecting to begin with. We expected just to get a simple answer of no submerged aquatic vegetation, but we got a lot more out of it, which is great. As you all see in the packet, as part of that, we did submit to the NDDB database with the state. That's a national diversity database system, just to see if there was any threatened species or anything like that in the area. We submitted it and we got the answer back that they don't have anything and they don't expect any adverse impacts. So kind of a simple checkbox, but it's a process to go through with DEP, and we got a response back from them, which is great. So the short answer is a lot of information, kind of dorky and detailed information, but it'll help us going forward, and nothing that we see as a deterrent to the project as we go forward. So that's my quick update.
Just as an aside,
Keep going, Susan. Sorry, we missed you.
No, sorry.
What
So just as an aside to what Chad was saying, that natural diversity database, even though it's very nice to realize that there's nothing there that we're going to impact, if there had been something, it really causes a lot of delays. And I've seen a lot of other projects be held up in very specific ways because of things that were found. So it's actually really helpful to us to know that there's nothing there that we have to account for going forward, or that could delay our project because of something that would have to be done. In a previous project that I'd had, we had to hand pull an invasive species that was going to impact something in the area that they'd found in that natural diversity database, and we had to wait a full year till the correct season happened. So it did have a huge impact on the project in terms of time. So it sounds silly, but it's sort of thrilling that there's nothing there that we have to worry about, because it really can have a big impact on our timeline.
Very good. Anything else you want to report, Chad?
Not really. I mean, that's really what we've done as far as work-wise for the last couple of months. Again, it all came out great, and then we've been working with Susan and yourself a little bit to try to define the scope for how we go forward with the remaining amount of work and try to get it done by the end of the year, so that we can have it finished for the grant completion.
Hey, Nick.
All right. Yes.
Nick, this is Mike.
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
Okay, so it looks like we're going forward a little bit at a time. It looks all positive. How much more permitting do we have to do? Susan, you can answer, whoever.
Susan or Chad?
Sure. There actually is a fair bit of permitting that still has to be done. And in this round, what we'll do is actually bring things right up to the permit, to right before we do permitting. And what I mean by that is we'll bring our plans to a bigger percentage in terms of their development, and we'll bring forward a lot of the information to the point where the permitting can be started. There are 18 separate permits that have to be obtained for this project to be completely shovel ready. We're not going to get to that point. We do have to finish this grant before December 31st. We have been in touch with Don Friday, and we will be in touch with him again after this meeting to show him exactly how we're going to expend the rest of the assessment grant money. And we certainly want to bring things forward to be as, use their money as best we can to bring the project forward. But there are also a lot of timelines in play in terms of the permitting that we don't want to get stuck saying, yes, it's going to be a completely permitted project by December 31st, because that literally wouldn't be possible in the timeline. So we're going to get it as far as we can with information, but it won't be completely permitted. No, we won't have all of those permits.
Mike, this is Chad. I'll jump in to second that on Susan. That as you, I think you probably recalled, for the last year or so, we've been saying the permitting process takes about a year. Start to finish. By the time we do the plans, we get everything ready, submitted, we go through all that process. It's close to a year. We haven't really started that in earnest yet. The hope is that between now and the end of the year, we can prepare all the coastal permit documentation that we need so that we're ready to start that permitting as soon as the next round of funding becomes available. And that's really what we're trying to do, is get as much done as we can. The coastal makes sense because this is an environmental remediation grant. And part of what we're going to be doing with the coast is how do we cap that edge? How do we make sure the erosion doesn't happen from the water, the river coming in? And so getting all this stuff ready for that permit is what we can do. Submitting the permit, we don't have time for, or the funds for, quite honestly. It's going to be several months once we submit the permits, and we have to have this all expended by December. So, like I said, we're going to do everything, get all the plans, the details, the permits ready, and we'll have them basically, if you will, submission ready instead of shovel ready, but ready to go from a coastal perspective. Keep in mind, we still have other permits, land use permits. We have to go through the whole zoning process and all of that sort of stuff too, which all takes time. That process in itself is several months. But we anticipate that happening hopefully once we receive the funding from the state for the remediation itself. Is that
okay? So
answer your question?
I understand. So it's going to be a while. Okay. So my favorite little project, that while we're doing this, I thought I heard a discussion that we were going to do a traffic study in front of the seaport up to 95 and down to Mystic. We were going to look at the parking to make sure we had enough parking. I would think we would be doing that now while we're doing all this permitting. So we don't pick up, you get the permitting, then you got to go through this step. Because that parking and that traffic is always going to be a problem. So I think we should be starting to work on that now, I would hope. Your comments?
Yeah, Susan, why don't you address that?
I understand where you're coming from in terms of the traffic study being important, and I don't want you to think that we've forgotten about that. We're actually looking into that a little bit differently because we don't know with the timeline of what we're working on here and what we have remaining in the grant funding, if that's going to work. But there is some other funding available. And so we are looking into that. We haven't forgot about that. It's just sort of a parallel discussion going on to this one.
I just don't want to forget it.
Nope.
Susan, Steve White. We've done a couple of different traffic studies at Mystic Seaport Museum. Would any of the results of any of those be helpful to you?
Of the one that was done for the boutique hotel that's just adjacent to the property. And I've asked Keith information. Certainly, if you have any additional information, it might make it easier for us to take some of that information, verify it out, or add to it. That might make it a little bit cheaper or easier to deal with. So we'd certainly be to, I'd love to have the information, or if you think you have additional things that we don't already have in the office that I might not be aware of, we would certainly be interested in that.
Sure. The hotel study is the most recent, but another one was done probably 2016. Is that too old? That was when we were constructing, might have been 2015, constructing the Thompson Exhibition Building. Is that too old a study, or would that be worthwhile?
I think it's always to look especially at historical information. It might have been done in a different season. The traffic counts might have been done at a different time or on different days. It also might have been a bigger tourist year that year, or you might have had, a grand opening for something that, was really spectacular. For instance, in Groton, the year that we had op sale in the year 2000, things looked very differently when we looked at barometers from that year because of op sale being in town. So I think it's always worth taking a look at, and we'll definitely be taking in information, updating information, and that'll definitely be a part of this moving forward. But we're trying to not take that out of this pot of money because we'd like for this pot of money to remain in the assessment phase. A lot of the things in the assessment phase wouldn't really qualify for other types of money, but the traffic study we can probably get money for from several other different pots. So I'm trying to be very careful with the categories we're spending our money in.
Great. Just let us know anything we can do to help.
I'll jump in there a little bit too, that the traffic engineer that we use for the hotel at the Seaport is the same traffic engineer that's on our team currently for doing the traffic study for the Boathouse project too. And when we made sure that he kind of got all the data possible or a little bit extra data, knowing that this was coming down the road as well. But I do think we should look back at all those other studies because specifically the one we did for the hotel was kind of in winter months, and we had to do some extrapolation on that in order to get it to summer months numbers as well. So totally agree. And I think it's one of the things, as soon as the funding or when we can find some funding for it, we need to get moving on it.
Sorry, gang, I got in a little bit late.
No worries, Mike.
So did somebody join us?
Yeah, it's Mike O'Neill. I just
There
joined.
you are. I see you now. Okay.
So, Mike, we've had a review of the grant application status, and Susan went through the proposed use of some of the remaining funds of the assessment grant. Chad reviewed the vegetation study and some of the mapping and the determination by the state of no conflict, which is pretty significant. So we've just in the last week or two received the latest brownfields grant application, and the plan will be to utilize the efforts that have been put forth, beginning with Keith's effort early this year, and then morphed over the spring and summer, including with input from you and John and the Friends group, to load all that information, including trying to address the scoring criteria, the scoring rubric, and come up with as competitive an application as we can. Had some wonderful letters of support that were marshaled by Fran and Catherine and John and others. So anything you want to update the group on from your perspective?
Yeah, I apologize. I had a client call go long. I just got off it. But I did speak with Chad earlier today. He did bring me up to speed on what's going on. It sounds like we're going to have the format changed for the grant, so we're going to have to rewrite what we've done so far. A couple things on our side. We would like to, and Nick, I've mentioned this to you, when we do send that proposal in, we'd like to try and get some press for that and make it aware. There's really not much going on with the park right now or the Boathouse project. A lot of people have been questioning it. It would be nice to wrap a PR piece around the fact that the town has submitted the proposal. I don't know what the timeline is with the new format, if that's going to take another month or two to do. It would be nice to get it done certainly by year end if possible.
Yeah, I have no problem with that whatsoever. And the timeline is a little undetermined, but I think the expectation is that the state will be looking for submissions likely, second half of October or certainly sometime in November. So, and, obviously it'll be the town's, Danielle and the town's ultimate judgment call, but, on behalf of the committee, I'm happy to suggest that we let the world know that we filed an application, because people are, as evidenced at the meeting we had in December at the high school, there obviously is continued keen interest. So we want to try to keep that momentum going.
Absolutely. On the Friends part, we're going to be updating. There's a Facebook page dedicated to the park that we set up, we kind of control, and we were going to start updating information on that. It's pretty dated right now. So we're going to put the most current rendering, some of the information from the presentation I did last December or January, just to see if we can spur a little bit of conversation. As I said, we were getting a lot of people saying, what is the status of the Boathouse? Where are you guys? Is this still happening? So we feel compelled to get some information out.
Okay. Any other committee, any other new business that anybody that discussed the traffic study? Any comments from the public? Comments from the public? Last call, comments from the public. Hearing none. Comments from the committee? Deb, anything you wish to add as our liaison to the selectmen?
No, I would just add that will continue to work with Susan and with the committee's agreement, have Chad move forward on the permitting work so we can try to, expend all the money or as much as possible in the grant before it expires and continue to move the project along so that hopefully when we get the remediation grant, we'll be, closer to being ready to permit. And just kind of to echo on the traffic, we have not forgotten about the traffic and parking, and that is moving forward, hopefully in parallel. And I'll continue to update you on that as soon as I have something. Kind of stalled with COVID, but it's definitely starting to move forward again. And finally, I do want to thank everyone for all those working so hard to get those fabulous letters. I think that's really going to go a long way. And I also like the idea of the PR to go with the grant application. Trying to get a photo, trying to get a release, maybe standing out there, something just to remind the community about the park and show them it is moving forward.
Totally agree.
All right. Anything else for the good of the order?
Nick, it's Tom Switz. I'm sorry I got bumped off early in the meeting and got back on, but could we, I've been asking if we could get just a kind of a spreadsheet of all of the 15, 16, 18 or so permits that would be required so we kind of have a game plan or a map of where we're heading, please?
Yeah, I'll do that. I know we've talked about it a couple months back, and then it has slipped to get to the full list as we've looked at just trying to figure out the scope for what we have remaining funds for. But I do have it. I just need to get it to you.
Thank you, Chad. Appreciate it.
And to add on to that, Chad, if it was possible, I mean, obviously the schedule that we did last year has been obviously adversely delayed by the pandemic, and we could update that, with our submittal dates for permitting and for our grant applications. I think that would be also a good roadmap to have in planning the rest of the project.
I agree. We'll get it done.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Happy to entertain any questions, comments, concerns.
Nick, I have
Hearing
one
none,
other bit of business. We had initially, when we were going to demolish the buildings, had to do an assessment with regards to the toxicity of the existing buildings with regards to PCB, lead, and asbestos, and whatever other lovely characteristics these buildings might have. We are going to have to do that at some point in time, seeing that we're now keeping the building and moving it. It would be good to know what the level of that work is. I don't believe we've done that work yet, have we, Chad?
We did the assessment. So we have the full write-up of the house itself, but that was also done, like you said, in preparation for it to be demolished. We have not revised it for how we would treat it as far as keeping the house.
I don't know, this is, I think, a call for Susan, but I think in the short term, maybe this is something would help us, plan for the eventual moving of the building.
Makes sense. Fran?
I think I think we need to be prepared for educating the public about what the risk factors are to people. If we're applying for remediation grants, the question is, okay, well, what are they cleaning up, type of thing, and how dangerous is it to me? I think we really need to make sure that we're set and comfortable with providing people information on what this is about.
Hopefully, through the multiple community presentations, the community has gotten some sense of that, because that has been pretty well documented, right, Chad? Wouldn't you say?
We've definitely covered it at every presentation, but I would agree probably on some level that every time there's an article in the paper and there will be some new person that just moved to town or has lived under a rock and had said, "Oh my gosh, what do you mean it's contaminated?" So it might be worth, if we're going to do a press release as we go after the funding, that maybe that press release have a one-pager or some sort of synopsis to kind of explain what and why and how yes, it's bad enough that we need to do something, but it's not catastrophic bad.
Yeah, I think that's really appropriate, Chad. Yeah, that's right. Just prevents problems, really. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
There's no other comment. Or question. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Jim Kelly, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded by Mike Crowley.
Got it.
Any discussion about adjourning? Hearing none. Thank you all for your time this evening, and we'll keep you apprised of if we make a submission during the month. Otherwise, we'll see you this time next month.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Ted, Sandy.
Hey, Sandy, can you see my video now?
No,
Okay, thanks.
oh. We're down to 2. Oh,
Yeah, I'm just testing while you have it open. Where is my video? All right, I'll see you later, Sandy.
all right,
Bye-bye.
bye. This was the Mystic River Boathouse Park Implementation Committee meeting, Monday, October 5th at 6 p.m. Present was Breck Perkins, Chad Frost, Deb Downey, Farouk Rajab, Fran Hoffman, Jim Kelly, Catherine Birchinall, Mike Crowley, Nick Keppel, Steve White, Steve Planchin, Susan Cullen, Mike O'Neill, Tom Switz, Tim O'Brien, and one public user, and myself, Sandy Tashir, recording secretary. This meeting was recorded for public viewing.